Hi, Nick Vince here. When George A. Romero passed away in July 2017, he left behind him a legacy which will scare and inspire for generations to come, with titles such as The Dark Half, Monkey Shines, Creepshow, and my personal favourites, The Night of the Living Dead and Martin. Since his passing, his wife, Suzanne Romero, has devoted her time to preserving that legacy with the George A. Romero Foundation, better known as GARF. This week on the Chattering Hour, we dive into the world of George A. Romero with Suzanne Romero. And we're back with our special guest, Suzanne Romero. And I know that for many of us, George's passing left a huge hole in our lives. And his legacy is enormous. I mean, without him, there really would be no Walking Dead. As I mentioned, Suzanne set up the George A. Romero Foundation to help preserve that legacy, but also to support independent filmmakers inspired by it. Let's get Suzanne, thank you so much indeed for joining me today.
Well, my pleasure, my pleasure.
Now, I'd like to obviously go back to George's passing left a huge hole in the genre for so many of us. But do you think George really understood how much he was loved and admired?
I think he I think he definitely knew that he was loved, but I also think he didn't think it mattered.
Right. Right.
So, let me tell you a story. When we found out that George was, you know, terminal,
Right.
essentially,
Yeah.
he immediately said to me, I don't want to talk about business ever. And
Right.
I thought, oh, okay, so fine.
Yeah.
And we continued doing what we normally did together, which was play games and, all that stuff. So
Right.
while we were playing Scrabble, I asked him, I took a chance and I asked him what he thought his legacy would be. And he basically said, nobody cares. Nobody really cares. Nobody really cares. And I was taken aback by it then. And then when he passed, a few weeks later, those words kept coming back to me.
Right. Right.
And I thought, that can't be true. Even though I wasn't really, I'm not really a fan of the genre. I'm not really
Right.
a fan. I didn't know who he was when I met him. So it
Gosh.
really, I just, even though I'd gone to conventions with him and events and I understood that he was iconic and all that, but his attitude was that it really, at the end of the day, didn't really matter. And I thought that's, I couldn't accept it. And that's what made me decide to 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 get this foundation off the
Right.
ground, because to me it meant that we needed to keep his name relevant. We needed to elevate the genre. We needed to elevate him. Uh, we also needed to do good work for young people and all people who love this genre.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, Nick, I have to say, my learning curve has been woo, because I really did. I knew through osmosis what his work is, and of course I've seen all his films over and over again, but I
Mm.
didn't know a lot of the details, and so I've learned a lot.
Right. Right. Right.
And I'm so proud of what we've done in such a very short period of time.
Yeah, no, and I want to talk about a little bit more about GARF GARF, the George A. Romero Foundation. Um, but before we do that, I'd just like to touch on another another celebration of George's life, which was the his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. What's your favorite memory of that day, if I may?
You know, it was a bit of a fog because I was an emotional mess and I really needed to keep it together. So a lot of my energy was spent trying to keep it together.
Right.
So for me, it was, about that. I did a little speech and I hardly remember what I said. It was a bit like a wedding day. It was, you know, I have memories of it, but I hardly remember it because I was in a bad place.
Yes. Yes, because it was only, I mean, it was in October and George passed
Yeah.
in July of that year.
Again, he didn't really want the star, but he never stopped it.
Right.
So it he didn't it was part of his MO not to be, excited about this. Uh but so he didn't really support it, but he didn't say to me, Suze, stop it.
Right.
So we didn't. And Chris obviously, did everything in his power to make this happen. And I'm totally grateful to him because, he deserved it. He deserves it. And he knew. So at least he knew that um, the acknowledgement was going to happen, even though it was Hollywood and, he was never tight with that community. He struggled with it. He always wanted to be the maverick, the independent filmmaker, anti-Hollywood, all of that. But at the end of the day, he was proud of his work, proud of the profession, and glad that the suits appreciated him.
Right, right, right. Because I mean, you had some great guests there: Malcolm McDowell, Edgar
Sure.
Wright, Greg Nicotero.
Right.
How did they get involved?
Well, I think Chris asked them to come and speak, and of course they didn't hesitate. They said absolutely, and uh, so they all came, and there were a lot of guests, and it really went beautifully. So, and
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of stuff on my walls in regards to his work, but I do have the star uh, on my wall. So I,
Ah,
I'm very proud of it.
right, right,
and
right.
I'm so grateful to Chris Rowe who made it happen.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I remember chatting with Chris
Yeah.
and what he was going to go through to actually get it all
Yeah.
organized. And
Yeah, it's a big chew, and he
yeah,
did it.
yeah,
And I'm grateful for him for having done that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think one of the things I loved about the ceremony, I wasn't able to attend personally, but I hear that Malcolm McDowell said that George was one of the last true gentlemen in Hollywood. I think, and I don't, this is my impression of George. I met him on a few occasions. He really was a gentle giant. Is that
He was very gentle and a giant. So yes, he was very gentle, very soft spoken, but don't mistake that for a lack of strength, because he had, he was extraordinarily resolute, and he was focused on what he wanted. Even though he was gentle and his approach was uh, not very aggressive, it, but he got it done.
Did you ever get involved in the production of any of his films?
No, but I had never even been on a set So my first set was Diary of the Dead,
Right.
and then I went and did Survival as well. So, but I was definitely involved in the writing of it, and I was often his sounding board. Um, and I think he of course he realized that I was not his demographic. So when I liked it, he was like, okay, good, because and I'd also laugh because I read mostly nonfiction, and I have a very highbrow literature and all that stuff, and I would read his scripts and I'd say, oh my God, how many F-bombs are there in this script? And like there would be like 80 of them, and I'd be like, oh my God. So I got used to reading, and then I was his reader. He would say, could you read these scripts? And I would, and he said, if there was anything that you think I might like, let me know. And then one out of maybe 50, I'd say, I think this may have some potential, and then I'd hear, it's garbage. Like, okay. So, you know,
Yeah.
he was a prolific writer. He wrote and wrote and wrote. He loved being in that bubble very much. Yeah.
Right. Right. Because talking about writing, and I know one of the things that he was working on before he passed, and that's this magnificent. Oh, see, I keep
Yes.
on doing this. Now I'm going to have to put this right in front of me.
Yes.
Yes, the living
Yes.
dead.
Now you see, I did a lot of the research for him on the aircraft carrier and all of that, and I actually used to call him Luis, one of the characters' name, the scientist, and because he was very grumpy and difficult, and when George was grumpy and difficult, I would call him Luis. So.
Right.
So, when I read the book, first of all, again, it's not my kind of reading. I was nervous about it. Even though I was confident about Dan doing the work, I was
Yeah, this
confident.
is Daniel Krauss we're talking about
Yes,
for anyone
exactly
listening
right.
on the
Daniel
podcast.
Krauss, and he came to the house, and we chatted, and he would call me, and he'd say, I'm stuck, and so right away, I got the fact that he was in George's head. So that pleased me. Um, and anyway, I read the book. It took me a while to warm up to it, but then I definitely warmed up to it. I found it emotional. It was an emotional experience for me. I loved the Daniel's little legs that he left.
Yes.
I loved it. At the end, I closed the book and I said, oh my God, it's fabulous. And you know, Daniel's writing style is very different from George's. Daniel is much more flowery, much more, he used words that George would just never use. But he definitely got the sense of George's characters and the way they spoke, and uh, he just got the path, and he did. I've said to Daniel several times, he could not have done. There was nobody on this planet who could have done a better job. So
Yeah. Well, I've interviewed Daniel about the book as well, and as people who've watched the show regularly will know, I loved it, absolutely
oh,
adored
good.
it, and particularly the audible version of it as well,
Okay.
with Bruce Davison as one of the
Yes,
readers.
and Laurie Cardill, and oh
Thank
yeah.
you. I
Yeah.
couldn't remember Laurie's name
Yeah,
for the moment.
Lori, yeah, and she of course loves George, and she did Day of the Dead, which is my favorite of the big three. Um, And yeah, she did a beautiful job. So, they both did. And yeah, and I really care for Daniel Krauss. He's a good man, and he did a great job.
Yeah, it did. Are there any talks about turning it into a movie?
Well, there are talks, but that's as far as I can say. I've been gagged. I've been
the big word NDA. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
I'm not allowed to say, but
Right.
yes, there are some talks, and we're excited about it.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, because it's a bit, for those of you who haven't, you can't see and you're listening on the podcast. It's a big, thick book.
It's
it's
big.
about
It's a
it's about
tome.
12.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tome, but it's great. And as you say, you mentioned, I think, Daniel, it's the characters, and I think one of the things I love about George's films is the characters. My favorite of George's films, apart from Night of the Living Dead, is Martin.
Right.
And I was just thinking about, because I was preparing for the interview today, and it's just like, yeah, I just got the word Nosferatu, just the obsession of the older man, and then Martin, and this wonderful interplay between the two of them as to what exactly is going on here. And
Yeah,
I think,
Nick, he loved Martin. It was his favorite film. And one of the reasons it was his favorite film is frame by frame. He did everything he wanted to do as an artist. He didn't have suits telling him what to do, how to cut it, how to end it. He did that film exactly the way he wanted to do it. And as a director, that just doesn't happen very often. And it was a privilege, and he loved he loved having that opportunity to have made a film with a decent budget, and just everything. It was just perfect for him. He got to do everything he wanted, and like I said, as an artist, director, it's a luxury. And of course, the higher the budget, the less sovereignty you have as an artist. So that's why George loved the smaller movie, because he could control it. Not that he was a control freak, but it was his art, and he wanted to do it the way he wanted to do it.
right.
And so the smaller the budget, he was able to, exploit that to his fullest.
Yes, and I think you were alluding earlier on to the fact that he wasn't necessarily that fussed by the star of fame, because he was, to me, the quintessential independent filmmaker.
He was, but as his career evolves, he becomes less and less independent. And as soon as he is on a union set, he's not allowed to, pick up a camera. He's not allowed to, he wasn't even allowed to talk to the zombies, because that would elevate the zombies, to a union echelon. So, so of course, he edited, he wrote, he directed, and he edited, which are the three main components of making a film. But he used to be able to do all of it. He did all of it, and I think he liked doing all of it. Lighting, just the sound. He loved to do all of the work. But of course, as his career progressed, he was a union guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he wrote it, so some control there. Right?
It's fascinating, isn't it? The way that things are done to protect people's jobs,
right,
which then become straitjackets to creativity. Right. Apparently,
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always
it's
a
like,
trade-off.
Hurry up and wait on a set, because you're waiting for all the the peeps to do their jobs, and so yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So moving on then to the George A. Romero Foundation. When did you first start putting it together?
Uh, you know, I was in a fog, and I kept receiving these massive emails from folks in Pittsburgh wanting to celebrate George Romero. And I thought, and then I attended one of those, massive Zoom calls, and I thought, oh, this is ineffective. So I went to Pittsburgh, and I talked to all these wonderful people who loved George, and and I kept thinking, well, what can I do? What can I contribute? And I thought, well, maybe I'll do a festival, like a horror festival. And then I spoke to a whole bunch of people I know in the festival business, and they said to me, oh my God, Suzanne, not another festival. So I went, okay. And then I thought, well, maybe I can do a foundation. And listen, I was really thinking, okay, I'm going to just start a foundation, not knowing how much work that actually takes. And so it was an idea, and then I applied for a 501c3, and which is a nonprofit for the United States, and uh, not knowing that what I did really took a lot of courage. It was my ignorance, to be honest, and I'm so lucky that I instinctively I latched on to very smart people, and I was just very lucky that I was able to get a team together who works so hard, all pro bono, all for the love of George Romero. I mean, it's incredible. And I just, I'm learning, I'm learning, hey, how to run a foundation. I'm learning about George's career. I'm learning all the time. I, it's just something that I have to do.
Right, right. So what are the stated aims of the foundation?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, the stated aims of the foundation. What is its primary purpose?
Well, I think the primary purpose was to elevate the horror genre, elevate George Romero, also put cameras in little people's hands, it, support independent filmmaking, all of that, provide scholarships for theaters, filmmaking students. So all of that. Also, it's the archive. George Romero's archive is at the University of Pittsburgh's library system. So pleased that it ended up in Pittsburgh, which is where I thought the archive needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to get a horror study center named George A. Romero. But I also think it's important that we support smart horror, not blood and gore, but smart horror that has consciousness, that is impactful, and yet fun, right?
Yeah,
Because horror is fun.
yeah,
It's like going on a roller coaster ride. It's a physical, goosebumps. But I want it to be, at least I want to support smart horror. So it makes you think about things. And George was a smart horror writer, and I think we need to honor that. So yeah, so lots to do.
right.
Lots to do.
Yeah.
And our initiatives, we're starting to really grab on to some of these initiatives. I'm also extremely keen on getting a museum I'm astonished that it doesn't exist. And I think people from all over the world would come and see a museum that had virtual reality, that would have a cinema, that had a music room, you know, just all kinds of horror mediums would be celebrated in a bricks and mortar house. And, you know, not just stuff, but experiences. I think that it's a lack. And I think the George Romero Foundation can have a hand in helping that get off the ground.
Yes, because I mean, I know Guillermo del Toro lent a lot of his,
Yes.
and immediately said how much he'd regretted it because he really missed not having this stuff
Right.
around the house. But you're talking about a permanent horror
Yes.
museum.
Yes. And I went to Guillermo's and it was packed. And so I understand that people want to do it. I was a little bored though. It wasn't enough for me. And maybe because I'm not part of the genre, but for me to see an Edgar Allan Poe book, you know, even if it's in a curio, okay, it's neat, but it wasn't an experience. And I think a horror museum should be an experience. And I think that there's room for curios and all that kind of stuff, you know, but I think it needs to be more.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because you're saying it's a surprise, because if you think about, we have huge, great art galleries, we have
Yes.
museums. Funnily enough,
Yeah.
you've just reminded me there was a big exhibition, or probably about 5 or 6 years ago now, at the British Library, all about Gothic,
Right.
which was extraordinary because
Right.
they had Clive Barker's handwritten Hellraiser script. They even
Right.
had some, I'm getting goosebumps, the letters that were written purportedly by Jack the Ripper.
Okay. Very
Um,
cool.
yeah, those kind of things you think, oh yeah, that, even if you're not a huge fan, you're going to know something
Right.
about it.
And
But
you know, what
yeah.
makes music
Mm,
give that extra little edge to a film? And you know, the instruments that they use and just the rhythms and what makes a human being when they hear these sounds get excited or fearful. Same thing with art, you know. And Jack the Ripper, a real human being, a monster, really, at the end of
yes,
the day, a monster, a
yes,
sociopath,
yes,
and, you know, a scary man. But this is real, as
yes,
opposed to often horror is fake,
yes.
right? It's manipulated to
Yeah, it's like
frighten
the
you.
universe, like the Halloween, the haunted houses you get at Universal
Right,
Studios, and so,
right,
it's like
exactly.
3 minutes of absolute screaming terror as far as I'm
Exactly. Except
concerned.
they're not really though, you know, like they're okay. I guess if you're a kid, you know, then
Or
oh,
me.
very scary.
No, no, not, no, no, sorry, or me, because I've
Okay, you get scared.
I
Okay.
completely utterly
Okay.
lose. As Chris can testify, because he took me around.
Okay. Okay.
If you're scared of cats like me, it
Okay.
is. But it's that,
Okay.
then there's that visceral thing. But what we're discussing now is something that is far more about, you know, how they actually put together the universe of
What are the
Frankenstein.
triggers? What are
Yes.
the triggers? And it would be fascinating, you know, if you put like a heart rate on people who are watching
Oh
something,
yes.
you know, just to see how physically they become different.
Yeah.
And obviously this is something that they desire. They
Yeah.
want to experience this elevated heart rate, you know, the sweating, the fear, you know. Anyway, I just think it's all fascinating and to be studied. And of course, the Horror Studies Center in Pittsburgh does just that. very smart people studying all this great stuff. You know, it's important because often, you know, horror has been dismissed as, you know, B movies and trash movies or tax write-off films, you know, that sort of thing. And I'm thinking maybe we ought to change the way people view these films.
Right, right. And I think you alluded to the horror studies program at University of Pittsburgh.
Yes, yes.
And
Yes, we have some Professor Adam Lowenstein, who is on my board. I say my board, on the GARF's board, and you know, he's intrinsically responsible for elevating horror into an intellectual process. So it's important work, and I support it 100%, and so does the GARF. So I think we can merge between, you know, the visceral, the heart, and the brain. You know, we can put these two together and do good stuff.
yeah, yes. And a dear friend of mine, Patricia McCormack, is a professor, and she studies European horror and horror films
Okay,
in
I would love
the
to meet
UK.
her, actually.
You would. She's an amazing lady.
Oh my goodness, I should ask, what's her name?
Patricia McCormack. But
Okay.
through Chris, I will make sure you have a way of
I would love to
connecting.
have a conversation with Miss McCormick.
Yeah, she's extraordinary, and her, you know, her amazing knowledge of European horror films
Wow.
and so on,
Yeah.
and very, very, very clever lady. So one of the other projects that I know that Garth has been working on is the amusement park, which is a film that was made in 1973, off the top of my head.
Indeed, yes. You got it right.
Yeah, I got the title card in my imagination. I was watching that this afternoon. It's extraordinary.
Isn't it?
It's amazing.
It's an interest, you know, I have, you know, Daniel Krauss wrote, you know, it's the most scariest of Romero films. And I thought, Daniel, whoa, you know, I'm afraid of those words, because then we'll have a whole bunch of fans, you know, saying, well, it wasn't that scary. But it is scary in the sense that the subject matter is still terrifying, even after, you know, all these years, where we still dismiss the elderly. And it's just so important that we, you know, help. And in this film, it basically says we're all going to be old. So, you know, we need to support and not dismiss, especially in these days where everybody's so woke. You know, I think maybe we ought to do some work on our treatment of our elderly.
I think it's, as I say, I'm just a couple of minutes. I approached it with trepidation, because I thought George directed this, he didn't write it.
Right.
But and I thought, this is a George Romero film, and this is a subject that I think, I grew up with elderly parents. My parents were quite, you know, in comparison, because of the Second World War, I came along quite late.
Right.
In their lives. So mum was in her late 30s when I came along. Therefore, it's something I was conscious that the fact that my parents were older than all my contemporaries, therefore,
Right.
you know, they retired early, etc. So it's always been something I've been very conscious of. Couple of moments in the film, the moment where he's talking to the kids and the guy that says, hey, you a pervert.
Right.
I'm not quite sure if it's the word pervert, but that's the import. He's just talking to kids. And the one where the young couple go into the
That's the one. That's the scene that freaks me out. Yeah. I was like, when I saw that scene, I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah,
It's it's extraordinary, isn't it?
it is.
What was the genesis of this? Do you know how George got involved in this?
He was hired, he had an acquaintance who was involved with the Lutheran Society, and his wife uh, works directly with the group, and they wanted to do an industrial film. This was a precursor to Meals on Wheels. This was before some of these initiatives became standard, where uh, you know people support for the elderly. Anyway, they said, listen, we would like to do an industrial. Do you know anybody who directed? And Carl Robinek said, as a matter of fact, I do. And he's a young filmmaker in Pittsburgh, and I think we should give him a go. And so it was a 3-4 day shoot, bing, bang, boom, and they did it. And I have to say, when I first saw this film, it had Romero's footprint all over it. I mean, it's oozing with his style, the way he cut it, the way he shot it. Um, I just thought it was an incredible merge of a young director um, uh, still feeling his style. Because actually, George thought he never really had a style, but he did. But he didn't think he did.
Right. Right. It's interesting. Well, yeah, as you say, then you think, okay, well, there's the kind of the crowds and the feet and there's one moment where the central character is suddenly on her own, and then suddenly there are people back again.
Right.
And it's very, very cleverly done. It's
Yeah.
the use of space and crowds and so on.
Right.
So yeah. So I think so it's just been restored. What was
So
that
we
process
had
like?
it restored in 4K in New York. And we just announced that Shudder, a subsidiary of AMC, bought the film. So
Oh, brilliant.
they own it now. So I've handed the baby over to them, and I think they will be a good custodian for this film.
Right.
And we had agents, and so the agents are still selling foreign territories. But finally, I think people will get to see this film. Shudder will stream it, but then they'll do a DVD, Blu-ray at the end. But I'm still hoping, though, that we can do theatrical events, where we can invite people to come and see this film, get Romero, uh, like-minded folks together, and see a movie. Of
Right.
course, with this pandemic, this seems like so far away, but
Yes.
hopefully, with all these vaccinations, that we can get a normal life going in the next 6 or 7 months. We'll see.
Yes. Because
But go
sorry,
ahead.
I was going to say I think you squeezed in a premiere at MoMA in New York in January of last year,
Yes,
just
yes.
before.
It was a great event, great evening. We also premiered it in Pittsburgh as well. So, yeah, so we've had two theatrical events, but I think we'd like to do a little more. I think this film needs to have that human element to watch the film. And I find it astonishing because I think people, they don't know what to expect. They know it's a Romero. They've heard, you know, reviews. They've seen reviews. And like you were reluctant, or,
Mm,
you were like, uh, you know. Uh, so I still hope that we can do in-person events with this film. And I understand that it's George Romero that gives it its impetus, but actually I really do hope that the message makes it, though. It's important. And, you know, yes, it was a Romero, but it's the message that really is important here.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's, as you say, it was kind of, was this, you said it was a Lutheran church?
Yeah, the society,
Society of
for
Lutherans.
senior life,
Right.
yeah. So, good people looking to, put the word out, in this sort of community industrial. And George never mentioned it in any of his interviews. I mean, it was just absolutely non-existent. And so when George and I and a group of intimates saw the film, we were like, Jesus, why didn't you mention it? Ever. He's like, well, it was nothing. It was like, they gave me a few dollars, 4 days, bing, bang, boom. We shot it, we edited it, and it was done. It was like a nothing, he said, but really it is something. It really
Yes.
is.
What else is Garth up to at the moment? What other projects are you working on?
Well, I'm super keen. We're going to run a contest. Young filmmakers all over the world. We're going to ask them to do a short film, horror film, and I'm hoping that the applicants or the contestants, from Korea, from Belgium, from Zimbabwe, they hand in their films. And I am so keen on seeing the differences culturally, the way, they're going to do their little movie. And, the difference, what horrifies a Korean may not be the same thing that horrifies a Norwegian.
Right.
And I would imagine that we'll get a sense of that. So I'm excited about that. But, again, we can't quite do it just yet because we're still concerned that we don't want to put anybody in danger health wise. So
Yes.
we need to time it so that everyone is safe when they do these little 5-minute films. So,
right.
But that's exciting. And we're getting a historical plaque in Pittsburgh for George Romero. We do an October celebration of George Romero called Romero Lives. So, we're keeping busy.
That's
and
good.
we have our little Garf network. We have our little podcast too.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so we have our Garf network, and we're doing a celebration, the 40th for The Howling.
Right.
And then we're going to do NIGHTBREED, and we're going to do some of George's later films in June. And yeah, so we're busy.
Yes. Yeah, that sounds different. Now, you're also the executor of George's estate.
I am.
So without going into details, and I don't want you to break any NDAs or anything, is other stuff coming on with George's work that we can look forward to?
It's because I'm the custodian, I feel that we need to mostly I'm the gatekeeper.
Right. Right.
Trying to make sure that if anything gets made, it needs to be good, or at least the attempt has to be well intended. Let's just put it that way. And the fact that the archive is set, it thrills me to no end. So yes, maybe there are some projects, but again, we're very cautiously optimistic. Let's just put it that way. Yeah.
Right.
Because
Good.
really, at the end of the day, so many people would do such trashy things that we just can't allow that to happen. So
yes.
So we need to be overprotective, I think.
Right. Which makes perfect sense. What do you think George would have made of Garth?
I don't know. I have to say, I don't know. I think he would be, I don't know. I think he would be, I don't know, proud that I'm doing, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he would think it was all a bit of nonsense. I'm not sure. But
Right.
I hope that he would like it. I think he
Mm.
would. My instincts are that he would. But he never really liked fuss. He was, didn't like the fuss, and he would maybe think that this might be a bit fussy, but tough
Yeah,
bananas.
yeah. Because I think what you're doing is so important for the, for
I think so.
not just protecting his legacy, but also encouraging independent filmmakers.
I think so.
Yeah, I think those are incredibly important aims. Now, before we finish, I always end this show by asking my guests a series of questions about kind of imagining if you're about to go on a very long journey.
Okay.
What film would you take with you? This is you, Suzanne. What film would you take if you were going on this incredibly...
I would go with Lawrence of Arabia.
Ah,
I think that's my favorite film.
right. When did you first see it?
Well, I've seen it hundreds of times, but I guess the first I saw it was when I was maybe mid-20s.
Ah,
And Nick, George, when we started dating, how you sort of try to feel out who this person is, and he was trying to feel out, sort of my my cinema, or my my realm of what I liked in cinema. And he basically told me that I was, like a retard. So
charming.
charming. So I went, oh, yeah, because he kept saying, well, do you know who Gary Cooper is? Do you know, and he kept saying, do you know? And I go, no. And so he spent the 12 years that we were together teaching me, exposing me to film.
Right. Oh, interesting.
So from retarded in 2005 to, not so bad. I've seen a lot of films since then.
Right.
But yes, Lawrence of Arabia or The Sound of Music.
Two big sweep, and
I do like sweeping. I do.
Yes, yeah. Honestly, I was just, because I saw both of those in the cinema when they came out, and I remember The Sound of Music had an intermission. I'm trying to remember if Lawrence of Arabia
It does.
had an intermission.
Yeah. They're big, David Lean, so big, epic, and so, but the way it's shot, the way, just everything, it's just extraordinary.
Yeah. What about a book?
Oh, book. I love books. I'm a big, I really liked Herman Wouk's, see now, again, I can't remember the title. Herman Wouk's, they did a film too. Herman Wouk, I've read all of his work, love him. Ayn Rand, Fountainhead.
Right.
Good book. Yeah. Those would be, I guess, the two books I would bring.
Right.
If I could remember the first one.
I'm putting guests on the spot.
I can't remember it, but it's a big, huge volume, huge book. Anyway, I guess what happens is we Google.
Yes.
Oh, I can't. After a couple of cocktails, you're like, oh, let me Google that. Because I guess our brain has become just lazy.
Yeah. What about an album?
Yeah, so I really like classical music. So I guess it would depend on my mood. I'm a big mood music person. But if I had to choose an album, I don't know. I think it would have to be Oh my goodness. It's hard. Anything Brahms, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, great composer.
a
Yeah.
great composer.
Yes. My mother used to sing me the lullaby when I
Oh,
was a
yeah.
child.
Oh,
One of my
yeah.
earliest memories.
Wow, that's a good one. That's great.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, should have sung it to me in German as
I
well.
also really like opera. I'm a big opera
Ah.
person. So, anything Puccini would do good.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Madame Butterfly and yes.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
also like Broadway. So big musical. George loved musicals. I love musicals. We go to New York, you go to musicals. Yeah. So music is a bit tougher because music is about how we feel, and
Yeah.
or how we want to feel.
Yes.
So we put music on to get there,
Yeah.
so, but if you had to choose one thing, I guess I would just, the big B. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brahms. Yeah.
Big Brahms. Okay. What about a favorite food or drink?
Okay. Same thing. I love food. I'm a big foodie. I eat everything. But it's funny because I always fascinated by, if you're a prisoner and you've got your last meal,
Uh-huh.
what would that be? Then I found out that the budget is $50. So, okay, my last meal would be way more than $50. So I better not commit a crime.
Yeah.
I love I don't know. I love I guess steak tartare, oysters. I love sushi. When I was in Japan, I ate beautifully. I drank lots of sake. I love sake. Yeah. I
Ah.
think I think Japanese food
Ah.
with a good bottle of sake would be
Ah.
pretty
Yes.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. We always have a Japanese lunch at home.
Okay. Yeah. A little
Yeah.
bento. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We have,
Perfect.
yes, I have a rice cooker and
Oh,
yes.
great.
Yes. Yes. And my
It's
husband
great because you
cooked and
it doesn't fill you up like a big meat,
mm,
dish. It's all generally light and
yes. Yes.
small. And
Small
I do
things.
like tapas too. So
Ah.
I like to eat little things.
Right. Right. Browsing. Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't like the big solid meat,
Blowout thing.
potatoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
too much.
What about a work of visual art, a statue, a painting, or
Wow. Wow. Again, uh, wow, there's so many beautiful paintings. I went to Milan to see the Last Supper.
ah,
I am actually a solid or I'm an atheist or
right,
agnostic, solid. But I cried when I saw that painting. I just, first of all, it was a lot bigger than I
mm-hmm,
thought it would be, and I just that painting had such an impact on the world that I could feel it. So again, would it be the painting I brought with me to an island? I don't know, but it was the painting that affected me the most when I saw
right,
it.
right. Yes, I've never seen it in the flesh. I would love to see that in the
It's
flesh.
wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
What about?
go ahead.
I was going to say, what about a luxury? Something we've not mentioned. So just something frivolous, if you like.
Like in terms of an article, like a
An
thing,
article or a
a,
thing
a
or a
luxury.
luxury, a bubble bar,
Yeah. Wow.
something to make
Again,
it.
yeah. Geez. Um, Good food. It, to me, a dinner out with good company is really great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we haven't done that in a while, but
Yes. Yes.
but it is something that I really do enjoy, going out for dinner, making occasion. I like to dress up, and I like to eat well, and I love good company. So
Yes.
to me, especially these days, it's a
Yeah.
super luxury.
Yes. 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 I
And
didn't
I
realize.
miss it. I miss it
Yeah.
terribly. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Is only now you mentioned, I was lucky enough in lockdown to be invited out for a couple of meals whilst it
Okay.
was possible. I
Okay.
went to very nice restaurants with
Right.
very good and interesting company. I've
Right.
not been able to do it for like the last 3-4 months, and you just think,
Right.
yeah,
I
that's something.
Yeah, it's a luxury.
Mm,
I think I do it. I used to do it a lot. I did it a lot with George. I do it a lot. Because I enjoy it so much. But I now realize how luxurious it really is. So I
mm,
think with all this restrictions in our lives, really makes us keenly aware of
mm,
how beautiful life can be when it's healthy and open, and so yeah, I would say that. I also miss sport. I'm a big sports fan. I love
right,
my tennis. I love my hockey as a good Canadian.
right.
uh but George and I watched a lot of tennis together, and
Ah,
I'm an avid tennis player. I play 4 or 5 times a week when I
ah,
can. Yeah.
right, right, right. Okay.
Haven't done it in a while.
No, no, but we can arrange a super nice court and
Yeah.
good partner. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, going back to Garth again. So if people want to know more about Garth, where should they go?
They should go to www.georgearomerofoundation.org.
Right.
And we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, Instagram, all the social media. I don't do social media myself, but there are folks who do that for us. And but yeah, so the foundation.org, and we're all on every Twitter, every social media
Facebook and
thing,
yeah, yeah.
taglines and hashtags and all that stuff.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Suzanne, thank you so much for
Oh,
spending some
thank
time with
you,
me.
Nick. Of course. It was a pleasure.
Thank you again to Suzanne Romero and for all she's doing to preserve George's legacy. Join me next week on the Chattering Hour when I chat with a fellow Cenobite, Barbie Wilde. In the meantime, stay safe and well.